Well, Eugene, it's really nice to see you. Gosh, I'm trying to remember back to when we last met. Maybe it was at the last in-person ASPAC conference.
That's correct. It was during the tax summit we had in Hong Kong, if I believe, if I remember it correctly.
It feels so long ago. So I trust you're keeping well in these COVID times.
Yes, we're trying to stay safe and healthy. We have the measures in place, so we're trying to abide by those measures so that everyone can stay healthy together. Nice.
That's very nice. So tell me a little bit about Kpmg in South Korea.
Well, since I am a tax person, let me speak represent the tax group in Korea. Basically, we have several divisions within the tax group. We have a domestic tax division, global tax division, accounting and tax outsourcing division, which is the division that focuses on assisting with compliance matters, including VAT, indirect tax compliances. Of course, we have our transfer pricing group, customs group. So we have a variety of tax divisions within the tax group to cover various service lines that any client can think of. In terms of, I do get a lot of questions about what is the difference between domestic tax and global tax. Basically, the type of services we provide is pretty much the same. The only difference, the key difference is that our client profile may be different. In terms of the global tax that I'm part of, our clientele is 90% or more. Oh, well, let me take a step back. About 70% or more of our clients are foreign-based clients or global clients that have a business presence in Korea. But we also do serve local clients as well, probably clients that are not necessarily covered under our domestic tax group. Some of those clients we would be more than happy to assist with. So although there is a bit of a difference in terms of the clientele profile, when it comes to the type of services we provide, it's pretty much the same.
Well, it makes sense. Sort of a focus on the clients and their profile as opposed to us, right? Makes total sense. Now, as you're talking to clients, what are some of the recent legislative changes that have occurred that people ask you about a lot?
Our most recent amendments to the tax legislation, basically the proposed amendments came out late last year. That same legislation, pretty much without significant revisions to what was proposed, was passed in December last year. Of course, the following, the enforcement decree was further updated in February, but on an overall basis, there were a number of legislative changes like any other year. We do get a lot of questions. So were there any specific legislations that were that were incorporated into the tax law due to COVID-19? And certainly there were a number of changes, but for corporate-based clients, I would say none of those legislations would affect them, because the legislation was intended to target more towards mom and pop type stores, small businesses, rather than large general corporations. However, in terms of the overall amendment, there were a few that I would like corporate taxpayers to be aware of. For example, the tax credit carry forward period was extended from 5 years to 10 years. The NOL carry forward period was extended from 10 years to 15 years. So there were those type of more corporate focused legislative changes. Also, in terms of reducing the tax burden, the administrative burden of certain taxpayers, when it comes to BEPS documentation or transfer pricing documentation, there were certain rules put in place to reduce the burden of tax reporting. So those are kind of the general changes that were incorporated into the most recent tax legislation.
Well, that's interesting. Well, that's actually good news about the extended loss carry forward. So I can only imagine that's in response to the pandemic, right? And the difficulties that businesses were going through.
That's correct.
And then speaking about the pandemic and challenges businesses were going through, I can imagine that tax examinations were a little disrupted as well by the situation we found ourselves in. What's going on in that area today?
That's a question. And actually, that is a question that we get a lot from our clients. Apparently, COVID-19 has prevented the tax authority from having conducting an actual tax audit at the a taxpayer's business site. And therefore, especially during the first part of last year, many of the tax audits were either postponed, or if taxpayers were in the midst of a tax examination, those tax audits were suspended for a certain period of time. So generally, the Korean Tax Authority would schedule a number of tax audits in advance. They kind of know which taxpayers that they are planning to examine for the year. But that schedule has been postponed, and therefore we understand that the tax authority was not able to conduct all the tax audits that they have planned for the previous year. So starting, I think it started later last year, during the second half of last year, that they started to pick up on conducting those tax audits that had been postponed. But I think that trend is continuing into this year, and therefore we're seeing more and more tax audits actually being conducted and being launched, even during the early part of this year. And it appears that that trend will continue to go on for the rest of the year.
Interesting. And, you know, maybe it's too early to tell, but what are some of the common trends and themes you see arising in those tax exams for, you know, multinational clients?
We certainly cannot leave out transfer pricing. That's one of the key areas that the Korean Tax Authority always focuses on during a tax audit. Transfer pricing, any cross-border transactions, for example, if there's a management service fee payment, royalty payments that are made by a Korean subsidiary to its foreign affiliate, certainly those transactions, without a doubt, will be reviewed during a tax audit. So I think many of our global clients who have business presence in Korea are aware of those issues. But if there is a specific client that is expecting a tax audit, probably this might be the time to kind of revisit some of the issues that they had in mind, especially with respect to transfer pricing, management service fees, or cross-border royalty payments, and et cetera.
Well, Eugene, I can only imagine then with tax exams starting to come back, that you're going to be fairly busy in the short term.
Exactly. Actually, we're in the midst of our tax compliance season, which continues until end of March. And I'm already seeing a couple of tax audits being launched. And therefore, we have clients that have been asking for our assistance. So I think we will certainly keep ourselves busy for the rest of the first quarter, and hopefully in the following quarters as well.
Well, Eugene, and on that note, then I should really let you get back to your day job. Thank you very much. It's just been a pleasure catching up with you and hearing what's going on in South Korea.
Thank you for having me, Rodney.
Okay, stay healthy, okay?
Yeah, same to you. Thank you.